Hi all. In this particular video presentation, what I want to look at is the solutions for worksheet number 2 so that students could see exactly where they went wrong and to gain some further understanding on the questions that you had to do. Now, the first question looks at an individual known as Maria, and it says here that she has an income of $2,000. The goods and services that she's consuming between is food and clothing. The price of food is $5 per unit and the price of the clothing is $20 per unit. So therefore the maximum amount of food that Maria can consume is going to simply be, you're going to take the price of food and divide it into the income of Maria, which is 2,000, and 5 into 2,000 gives us a value of 400. So 400 units will be the amount of food that Maria can have if she spends all of her income on food. With regards to the maximum number of pieces of clothing that Maria can consume, again, we're going to take $2,000 and divide it by the price of the clothing, which is $20, and we're going to get a value of 100. So therefore, with regards to the construction of Maria's budget line, we're going to see that the intercept for food is going to be 400 and the intercept for her clothing is going to be 100. Now, what we're going to do is graph Maria's budget line. So we're going to put the food on the vertical axis and we're going to put the clothing on the horizontal axis. Now remember we said before that 400 is the intercept for food and 100 is the intercept for clothing. So what we have is that 400 is going to be for food and we have 100 for clothing, and therefore we could draw our budget line with regards to Maria's income of 2,000 and the price of the food and the clothing respectively gives rise to this particular budget line. Moving on, we realize now that we asked a question to fill in the blank. Maria cannot afford to buy a combination of 200 food units, or units of food, and 60 units of clothing, because this combination of goods is located outside or inside on her budget line. Well, you see the answer I've placed is cannot and outside, but how did we get this answer? Why are we sure that Maria cannot afford to buy the combination and that this combination lies outside of her budget line? Well, the answer is simple. We know that Maria's income is $2,000. Given that, and the price of food is 5 and the price of clothing is 20 units, it means that a combination of 200 units of food, 200 multiplied by the price of food, that's 200 by 5, gives us a value of $1,000, and then 60 units of clothing multiplied by the price of 20 gives us $1,200. So $1,200 for clothing and $1,000 spent on food. 1,000 plus 1,200 is a value of $2,200. Maria's income is only 2,000. So therefore, the expenditure, that combination of 200 food and 600 clothing, is beyond Maria's income, and therefore she cannot. She cannot afford to buy that combination, and therefore it lies outside of her budget line. What is the slope of the budget line? If you go through your notes again, you would have seen that the slope of the budget line simply is the price of the good on the x-axis, divided by the price of the good on the y-axis. The good on the x-axis is clothing, and the good on the y-axis is food. So therefore, the price of the good on the x-axis is going to be 20 divided by 5. That negative sign there arises because the budget line is negatively sloping from downward left to right, and therefore our value will always have a negative coefficient. So therefore 20 into 5 is going to be 4, and our answer will be expressed as -4. That is the slope of our budget line. What is the opportunity cost of one piece of clothing based upon the question? Remember, clothing is on the x-axis and food is on the y-axis. And if you realize, each time we increase the units that we consume of clothing, we're actually going to have to decrease the units of food. So it means, given that we have a slope of -4, it means each time we increase consumption of clothing by 1 unit, we are going to sacrifice 4 units of food. So therefore, the opportunity cost of 1 piece of clothing is going to be 4 units of food. That's how we work out that. Okay? Moving on. If Maria's income rises to 3,000 units, it means that the intercept of a budget line will be 600 units of food and 150 units of clothing. Remember how we get the intercepts? We simply ask ourselves, what will be the total amount of one good if you invested all of your income in that? And what is the total number of the other good if you invested all of your income in that? So income has risen from 2,000 to 3,000, and it therefore means we have our first budget line. This budget line was drawn based upon an income of 2,000 units. The second budget line therefore will be further to the right, because we now have a possibility of getting 600 units of food with a new income of 3,000, or a maximum of 150 units of clothing with an income of 3,000. So therefore, with an increase in Maria's income, it results in a parallel shift in the budget line. Moving on to question number 2, it looks at 2 individuals, Tracey and Lisa, who live in Montego Bay, where they make wristbands and sandals and they sell them to tourists on the beach. It says that Tracey can make 15 wristbands per hour but only 3 sandals. Lisa is a bit slower and can make only 12 wristbands or 2 sandals in an hour. So the question is asking us, who has the absolute advantage in the production of sandals and of wristbands? Well, to put together our information easily, I created a table. So in the table, we place the information that we just saw in the previous slide. Tracey makes 15 wristbands per hour. However, in 1 hour, she can make 3 sandals. Lisa makes 12 wristbands per hour and only 2 sandals per hour. Okay, so we see what each individual can make on a maximum amount if they were to devote their time in either wristbands or devote their time to creating sandals. We know that absolute advantage has to do with who can actually create more based upon the resources that they have. So Tracey, we realize, in 1 hour can create 15 wristbands, whereas Lisa can only create 12. So Tracey has the absolute advantage for wristbands. With regards to sandals, Tracey creates 3 in 1 hour, whereas Lisa creates 2. So again, Tracey is able to create more sandals. So she has the absolute advantage in both sandals and in the wristbands. But what about comparative advantage? And according to the theory of international trade, which you read in the notes, countries are encouraged to produce the goods that they have the comparative advantage in. And we know, again, based upon the notes, that comparative advantage has to do with the commodity or the good that a country can produce while incurring the least opportunity cost in the production of that said good. So ultimately, if a country chooses to produce good A, then the other good, which we can call good B, they should not sacrifice too many units in comparison to another country. So let's look at Tracey and Lisa. We see here that Tracey has incurs an opportunity cost of 0.2. What does that mean? Well, remember, Tracey has 15 units. Well, let's go to this other slide here where I broke it down for you. If in 1 hour 15 wristbands can be made or 3 sandals, mathematically we can express it as 15 equals 3 for every hour. Alright, you can either make 15 or 3. So to find out how much one wristband costs in terms of sandals, mathematically we have 15 equals 3. Therefore, to get 1, we have to divide the left hand side by 15, which gives us our value of 1. So if we are finding for 1 wristband, and if we divide the left hand side by 15, we have to therefore divide the right hand side by 15, and we have 1 over 5. 3 into 3 1, 3 into 15, 5, you have 1/5, and therefore we get a value of 0.2. So again, this is how we can find, right, this particular calculation shows us how we can find the cost per unit of one. So 15 wristbands can be produced in an hour or 3. So therefore, if I chose to produce only one wristband, how many units of sandals would be given up? And in this case here, based upon the calculation, we give up 0.2 units of a sandal. Okay, so going back to our table, we therefore, the information we used there was from Tracey. So Tracey incurs an opportunity cost when she produces. For every wristband that Tracey produces, she loses 0.2 of a unit in sandals. Likewise, for every sandal that Tracey produces, utilizing the same formula and process we went through, she would have given up 5 wristbands for every sandal that Tracey produces. However, Lisa incurs an opportunity cost of 0.16 for every wristband that she chooses to produce, and with regards to sandals, incurs an opportunity cost of 6. So she gives up 6 wristbands for every sandal that she chooses to produce. We therefore see that Tracey gives up the least amount of sandals compared to Lisa. So we're comparing, looking at comparative advantage. Tracey gives up the least amount of sandals compared to Lisa when she chooses to, oh sorry, I made a mistake here. Tracey gives up the least amount of wristbands when she chooses to produce these sandals. Alright, so for every unit of sandals that Tracey produces, she forfeits 5 wristbands, whereas Lisa gives up 6. So Tracey is able to produce sandals at a lower opportunity cost than Lisa. So therefore Tracey has the comparative advantage. And when we look at the wristbands, Lisa has a comparative advantage because for every wristband that Lisa produces, she gives up 0.16 of a sandal, whereas Tracey gives up 0.20 of a sandal. So Lisa has a comparative advantage over Tracey when it comes to the production of wristbands.